Hello and thank you for joining me. In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to restrict access to your magazine so that only those users with permission can access the magazine. You may want to do this in an environment, for example, if you are charging your clients or your end readers for access to the magazine. Okay, there are two areas in the software where this can be managed. The first is under the Design tab, and it's the second area from the bottom called User Login. If this does not appear to you within your software, it's because you have not subscribed to our Gold cover, which is our annual maintenance package, and it's mandatory for you to have Gold cover in order to have this functionality within the system. User Login. By default, it is disabled within your software. However, if you choose to enable it, you have four different options. Have the end reader log in on the start, or choose to have them log in when they first click to zoom in on an article. The next option that can be set is to have them log in after a set number of pages, which you can manipulate here. And last but not least is to log in after a set number of seconds, which you can manipulate here also. Now, for our example today, we will log in on the start. With any login option, you should really provide an ability for your end reader to go to a register page if they don't already have access rights. And secondly, many of your users will always forget their password. So it's good to have an option where they can go if they choose to have their password resent to them. So those are simply the URLs that you have already established on your website for that. Okay, so we've chosen to enable user login, and any end reader for the magazine will be prompted to log in on the start of the magazine. They will also have the option to go to a register and to a forgotten password page. The next option is where we set up our users within the system, and we determine which templates or which magazines and publications those users can have rights to. You can also set up your user to have access for a specific period of time. Therefore, every user can have an associated expiry date. Under the Users option on the top menu, simply choose the Manage Users button. Again, this will only be available to you if you have Gold cover access. It's prompting me to enter my login details, which it tells me at the top of the screen I would have received in my registration email. And now it's bringing me into the system. The first thing to do is to create a group into which I want to place my users. So let's call this Training Group 1. Now, in Used By Templates, this gives me an opportunity to select some or all of the templates to which I'd like to give this user group access to. So today I only have one template in my system. If I had several more, I could choose to select all or to deselect all, and perhaps to delete the ones I don't want to give this group access to. Okay, when I'm happy with my choices, just click Create. And now I see that I have one group created in the system. Now for today's example, I will create only one group, but I will add two different groups of users. The first I'm going to choose by importing a CSV file. Now this may have been exported from a subscription system that you already have in place. And secondly, when I have imported a list of 10 users from my CSV file, I will then manually add another user. Okay, let's go. Let's import a CSV file from my own system. I have that stored here on my hard drive. And it's user list 2. And I must tell the system my CSV file delimiter. In my case, it's a comma. And I choose to upload that into the system. So it has uploaded my file, userlist2.csv. Now, I know that in my file, I already have a title row in the top. So if I do, I must click Yes on the second option, and then I must associate the columns in my CSV file with the appropriate field name in the system. So let me do that quickly. And it's not mandatory to set an expiry date. However, if you are dealing with subscriptions on a commercial basis, it is wise to do so. And let's simply upload that information into the system. And there are my users. I did mention that I had 10, so you can see them all listed on screen, their username, email address, expiry date, and the system tells me if they've had a certain number of invalid login attempts, for example. Now let's choose the second option, which is add user, and I'm going to add a user manually. That username is going to be Louise, and her email address is, and her expiry date I can set again as the 1st of January 2014, like all the others in this group, and I can associate her with any of the groups that have already been set up. Okay, so Louise should now be added to my system, and you can see that I now have 2 pages. Louise has been put in alphabetical order on the list, and I need to move to my second page to see the last person on that list now, because I have 11 users. At any time, for any reason, I can come into this area and I can actually choose to enable or to disable any of my readers. For example, I may decide for one reason that Ed Long should no longer have access, so I can simply disable Ed Long as user in the system and then select Go. Okay, so Ed, as you can see, his green light has gone out there, so he's no longer a valid user and he won't be allowed to log in for access to this magazine. All right, so just let's take a note of one of those users. It was Joe Smith, joe@3dissue.com, and I recall that Joe's login email password is actually Joe11. So that's the user we'll use when we're reading the magazine. So just to recap, we set the default access area options here for our end readers. And then we went to users on the top menu where we set up a group, and then we added users into the group in 2 ways. I showed you how to do so by importing a CSV file. I also showed you how to do so by adding a user manually. All that's left now is to build the software and see the end reader experience. And here we have the magazine loading. And you can see that as soon as it loads, it immediately prompts the user for their login name. And their password. You see here on screen I also have the options presented to me as an end reader to either choose to register or if I have forgotten my password. And we simply submit. And you can see now that the user access box has been lifted and I have full access to the magazine as an end reader. That concludes this video tutorial on user access control and user management. Thank you for joining me.